Do you like it then?
There's a very famous Indian Mahasiddha named Saraha, Master Saraha. And he is quoted as saying, "I bow down to that which projects both freedom and the cycle. I bow down to that which grants me every goal I desire. I bow down to that wish-fulfilling jewel. I bow down to the mind. For it is mind, and mind alone, that is the seed of everything." It's interesting when you look at that first line. I bow down to that which projects both freedom and the cycle. The cycle meaning the cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Birth, aging, sickness, and death. On and on and on. The suffering of samsara. Samsara is cycling without choice. So that's the cycle. Freedom is freedom from that. So in essence, you're stopping through the power of breaking that link, that cycle. You're free from that. That's freedom. When you look at that, I bow down to that which projects both freedom and the cycle. To project. I read that and I went, okay, wait a minute. So I got the dictionary out. I keep a dictionary by my meditation table, so when some word comes up, I say, okay, now what does that mean? What does it mean to project? Webster defines project is to ascribe characteristics to persons, places, groups, and things. I don't have it with me. To create in the mind, ascribing characteristics to persons, places, groups, and things. To project, creating it in your mind. So if you think about that, we're projecting samsara. Okay, we say that. People say, oh, that's just your projection, right? Oh, that's just your projection. Give it up. It's just your projection. Well, what if we're also projecting nirvana? What does that mean? Doesn't that just go right back to purifying and perfecting? This is something you have to analyze. You think about that. I have a little example. See if I can find it. It's going to be here. I'm going to use this as I'm going to call this the shiny object. Okay? I very recently, got a smartphone. This is not it. Somebody gave me this some time ago. But I've entered a new age with a smartphone. Oh my. I came out of retreat. 3.5 years in retreat. I was at the post office, standing in line at the post office. There was a woman in front of me, and she was talking. I thought she was talking to the woman in front of her. But she was talking about these very personal things, about somebody had passed away, and they were talking about renting the place in Tahoe, and it's going to be $10,000. I mean, do you hear what I know about this woman? And they've already gone through her jewelry, and some of it's going to go to Nancy, and some of it to Susan. I thought, wow, this is a very personal conversation. And I realized that she had a thing in her ear, and she was talking on her cell phone. I turned around to the woman behind me and I said, I kind of feel like I'm in a reality TV show. And she said, you wouldn't believe what people do now. She said, I was at a party the other night, and we were having a nice conversation, and somebody pulled out their cell phone to fact check me. I said, they fact check you. Okay, Google, and you don't even have to type it in anymore. You say, okay, Google, and then you say the word, and it comes right up. Holy crow. Okay, so you imagine that you've got a flip phone, and your friend comes to you with their smartphone, and they show you, wow, check it out, look at this, and they show you all the things that they can do on their smartphone. You get your email, you can fact check. So you think, oh, that's pretty cool. That's very cool. But you have this favorite. You've had this flip phone for 10 years. You're quite happy with your flip phone. And you go home, and you think about that smartphone, because that seems pretty cool to be able to. And then you begin to think about the things that you could do, how that might help you with your work, or with connecting with your children, all the many different things that you could use that smartphone for. And you start thinking about that. And then you think, well, I think I want one of those. And you begin to put your energy toward that. And eventually, you're going to get a smartphone. You're going to get a smartphone. And what happens when you get the smartphone? In that moment, you're happy, right? You got it. Right? Okay, now let's look at it let's look at the opposite side of it. Let's say you're at work and you have a new supervisor. And you just the first time you met that person, you just knew right away it was going to be a problem. There was sandpaper in your relationship the moment you met that person. And so you go home and you talk about it. You tell your partner, you tell your wife, you tell your husband, you tell your kids, oh, I don't know. And you go to work the next day, and you're standing around a water cooler, and this person comes up, and it's like, oh. You don't think you're going to be able to even stay in that job because it's just going to be too difficult. So you want to be free of that. And then not too much time passes, and you find out that the supervisor has been promoted and is moving to Chicago. Fantastic, right? You're happy. But what happens next? You get a new supervisor, right? Now maybe it's going to be a nice supervisor, could be, but typically, and the same thing with the shiny object. We have a shiny object. A new shiny object is going to show up in your world, for sure. Something else that you're going to want. And then eventually you'll get it, and you'll be happy in the moment. But often that happiness is pretty short-lived, because as soon as you got that smartphone, you realized that you didn't even know how to turn it on. And once you turned it on, you didn't have a clue what to do with it. There's all these pretty little pictures all over the front of it, right? And you can push these buttons, and a new screen comes up, and you don't know how to get it back to where you were before. Truly. That's a fact. So you think it was really easy to make a phone call with my flip phone. All I had to do was open it up and do that, and then like that. It was very easy. So we find out when we really analyze this that the happiness that we thought was in the phone was really in our freedom from wanting. Same is true from the wishing to be free of that irritating supervisor. It was wanting to be free. You either want to be free of it or you want to possess it. And you can see, if you check throughout your day, how many times you want and you get, because we believe that the happiness is in that. If I don't get that, we're trained to believe that. All our advertising is trained to believe that if you have this, now you're going to be happy. And we've been trained since we were old enough to want. to be able to say we want, and then to get what we want, to believe that the happiness is in the object. But if we realize that the happiness is in our mind, we can be free of the wanting without having the object. This is a very interesting thing to contemplate. It's something to really to think about, how it is that this happens. Realizing that our happiness is in our mind is a breakthrough. And that we, in the moment, have an opportunity to make a choice, whether I'm going to be this way or whether I'm going to be that way. What's appearing before us right now is a result of previous seeds we've planted, previous thoughts that created actions. You see, when you look at your mind, this stream, what pops doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from your mind. So what you put in your mind eventually is going to come out again. You're going to see it again. Yeah? So that's why it's very important to pay attention what you put in your mind. It's really critically important. In my family, when my children were small, football was a big deal. And didn't we just have a Super Bowl? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always had a Super Bowl party. Every year we had a Super Bowl party. So I had an idea. I had an idea that using football as an example was really good, because it makes it possible to get a concrete idea about how it is that the mind works and how you want to live your life, so that what you put in your mind is going to create the cause for happiness. In the Buddhist path, in the Bodhisattva path, we talked about the enlightenment warrior, they follow what's called the 6 perfections. So practicing generosity, practicing ethics, practicing patience, practicing joyful effort or diligence, practicing concentration, and practicing wisdom, growing your wisdom. So those are the 6 perfections. So you're the coach, and this is your game of life. So you keep on the field those 6 perfections. You play them. And you need to be really mindful, because if you're turning around and jack-jawing to the person behind you, those players, you never know who's going to come off the bench and go on in there. So on the bench, you got the 6, what we call the 6 root delusions. And they're also suited up and ready to go in. So you've got ignorance, you've got ignorant hatred, you've got ignorant desire, you've got pride, doubt, and you've got mistaken views. So they're all suited up, just ready to go in. Now you're mindfully watching your game of life, and it's beautiful, because they're all beautiful. They're playing so well together. But over here, anger comes up and says, "Coach, I want to go in." And you go, not now. Sit down. Okay. Because you're really concentrating. And this is what we have to do. We have to be there now in every moment, watching what's arising in our mind. So time and time again, anger or irritation pops up. And you keep telling them to sit down. You're not going to put them in. What happens if anger never gets to go in the game? What happens in real life if a player never gets to play? Don't they get fed up with the game and don't even bother to come anymore? This is how your mind works. This is exactly it. That's exactly it. We have to be aware of what is arising in our mind. We have to understand the consequences of playing the people that we're trying to keep on the bench. And when we do make the mistake and play one, we have to know what to do next. And we're going to be talking about all of that. How do you actually put that into action? How do you do that? What does karma mean? How do you pay attention to your karma? What do you do? So we will. We can't cover the whole path in one night, but we will. We will go through it. So this is what's really critical, to understand how it is, what these different mindsets create for us, and why it is that we want to abide in a state of patience. It counters anger. Ken MacLeod, who is a Kagyu practitioner, he was Kalu Rinpoche's, one of his heart disciples. And he gave a really nice analogy. He said, before you meet the Dharma,